This was absolutely a targeted murder because of the number of stab wounds that were on her body. It wasn't just, I want her dead. I want her beyond dead.
On January 30th, 2008, a local man was driving on Interstate 540 when he noticed something unusual on the roadside. It was a bloody body of a young woman. Her skin was sliced open. She had been stabbed so many times that all the blood had drained from her body. It was an act of overkill. But who could commit such a savage crime? And why in the middle of the highway? Hello and welcome back. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay updated. In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most horrific murders in North Carolina history. Without further ado, let's get started. On the cold morning of January 30th, 2008, around 7:30 a.m., David Jones was driving westbound on Interstate 540 when he noticed something unusual on the side of the road. Curious, he pulled over to take a closer look. What he found was horrifying, a lifeless body. Stunned, he immediately called 911.
I'm on 560 westbound, just past, I believe, the Buffalo exit, and I think there's a body on the side of the road.
Law enforcement arrived and discovered a woman's body lying on an embankment near the Buffalo exit. She was wearing a white shirt and torn blue jeans. Her body bore multiple stab wounds. The brutality of the attack had left her drained of blood, her skin ghostly pale. Deep wounds gaped holes across her body, showing the ferocity of the crime. Detectives knew this was no random act of violence. Someone wanted her dead, beyond dead. It was a deliberate, merciless killing. The body was sent for an autopsy, and the immediate task was to identify her. With no ID found at the scene, investigators braced themselves for a difficult search for answers. Luckily, when walking several hundred feet east of the body, officers found a phone. It had been turned off and exposed to the elements. Less than a mile away, they found a white Nissan Sentra, later confirmed to be the victim's car. Blood was found inside, and the console was broken, suggesting the attack began in the vehicle. Investigators collected DNA samples and ran the license plate, confirming the victim's identity as 21-year-old Latrice Curtis. Latrice Motrell Jones came into the world on May 28, 1986, in Raleigh, North Carolina. She was raised in a loving home with her parents, Sherman and Cynthia Jones, and her older brothers, Justin and Marlon. Her family called her Trace, and she was her dad's little shadow. Sherman often joked that she was his little boy in a dress, because she loved doing things most would call father-son activities. Her father remembered, "We did a lot of fishing. We did a lot of fishing. I even took her honey one time. I taught her everything that I knew about basketball. I taught her the dribble. I taught her the shoot. I taught her the layups. She was a daddy's girl all the way, no doubt about it." Latrice's tomboy phase stuck with her through junior high, but things changed in high school. She blossomed into a young woman, got her nails done, her hair styled, and basketball took a back seat. She was beautiful, popular, and full of life. Friends say she always had a smile and a way of making people laugh. Despite the attention, she stayed focused on school, thanks to her dad, who worked as a juvenile corrections officer. He made sure she kept her priorities straight. Her dedication paid off. Latrice first attended Bennett College in Raleigh from 2004 to 2005, later transferring to Wake Tech Community College. Eventually, she found her way to North Carolina Central University, majoring in accounting. No matter how busy she was, Latrice always had time for her friends, offering advice, support, and encouragement. She was always there, always smiling, one friend recalled. It was at NCCU where she met Darren Lee Curtis, an accounting major and former National Guard soldier. He was 5 years older and also from Raleigh. Darren was quiet and reserved, but kind and respectful. Their connection was undeniable. They started dating, and it wasn't long before everyone knew they were in love. Just a year into their relationship, Latrice and Darren decided to get married. They were young, but serious about their future. Both worked hard. Latrice in human resources at Sears and Triangle Town Center Mall, and Darren at a local firm in Raleigh. They had big dreams and a plan to make them happen. On April 27, 2007, Latrice and Darren exchanged vows, and she officially became Latrice Curtis. But the wedding didn't sit well with her family. Despite Darren being polite and reserved, they barely knew him. Latrice's father, Sherman, felt hurt that Darren never asked for his blessing. He said, "What wasn't respectful to me was that he never said anything to me about wanting to marry my daughter. I feel like he should have come and talked to me about it, but they never told me anything." Latrice kept the marriage a secret from her friends too. But one day, she showed up at work with a ring on her finger and casually announced, "You guys, I got married." Everyone was shocked. The newlyweds moved into an apartment in Austin Grove, Raleigh, full of hope for their future. By January 2008, Latrice was in her senior year at North Carolina Central University, while Darren had already graduated. She took evening classes using her daytime hours to work. She confided in a friend that she wanted to start a family soon, hoping to have a baby after Christmas. But she also worried that Darren wasn't ready. Their routine was simple. Latrice would come home around 8 p.m. after class, with Darren following shortly after. But everything changed on the night of January 29, 2008. Latrice went to school and never returned. The next morning, after failing to call her, Darren decided to call 911.
Girl, 911, where's your emergency? I'm in Prince Raleigh, but my wife goes to school out at North Carolina Central, and she did not come home last night. I talked to her last night. She was on her way home. She was in the car and everything. She had showed up. The last known place she was at NCCU. Did you talk to her while she was driving? Yes, she had the radio on and everything. She told me she was stopping to get something to eat. I don't know if she was still in Durham when she called me or she was on 540 coming back in around.
Meanwhile, at around 9:30 a.m., Latrice's father, Sherman, watched the morning news.
Breaking news. Body found on I-540. Had a tarp over. Nothing clicked.
Feeling something was wrong, he tried to contact Latrice, but she wasn't answering. He also tried calling Darren, but there was no response. Hours later, his concern turned into fear when officers knocked on his door and asked him to visit the police station.
Me and my wife, we didn't say a word to each other going down there. Not one single word. We got down there, it's probably about 11 o'clock. And they had us sitting in this room. They finally came out and told us that the girl's body that they found on 540 was identified as Latrice.
Sherman learned of Latrice's death after contacting the sheriff's department. Me and my wife didn't say a word on the drive there. Not one single word. When we arrived, they took us into a room and finally told us the girl they found on 540 was Latrice. Sherman and Cynthia broke down in tears as they realized their precious daughter Latrice had passed away. Not in an accident, but in brutal overkill. Back at the crime scene, a man suddenly approached the investigators, saying he was heading to work and noticed Latrice's car less than a mile away. That man was none other than her husband, Darren. Around 11 a.m., Darren was brought in for questioning. He told detectives he had fallen asleep after their last conversation and didn't realize she was missing until the morning. He was considered a suspect. His story about falling asleep and not searching for his wife sounded suspicious. Latrice's family couldn't understand why he didn't make an effort to find her. Despite the doubts, Darren cooperated with investigators, providing fingerprints and DNA samples. Police searched his apartment and car, but found nothing suspicious. Neighbors were also interviewed, but none reported any problems between the couple. They believed the Curtises were a happy young couple working hard to build their lives. With no solid evidence linking Darren to the crime scene, he was released. Luckily, right after that, a crucial tip emerged. At 1:30 a.m. on the night of the murder, Highway Patrol Trooper Isaac Cooper spotted a Chrysler Pacifica parked near the crime scene on Interstate 540. The hazard lights were flashing, the driver's side window was partially down, and the door was unlocked with keys still in the ignition. Yet no one was inside. The vehicle was parked on the opposite side of the highway from where Latrice's body was discovered. A quick license plate check revealed that the car belonged to 43-year-old Robert Lee Adams Reeves, a former pastor at Cedar of Lebanon Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York. Robert, who had relocated to Durham, North Carolina in 2002, was well known in church circles, even referring to himself as the bishop. His friends described him as intelligent, hardworking, and deeply committed to his ministry. One acquaintance recalled, "He was an excellent preacher, teacher, and organizer. Whatever he put his mind to, he excelled at." However, Latrice's family had never heard of him. Her father, Sherman Jones, was baffled. "I didn't know anything about Robert, never seen him before in my life. My daughter is 21, this dude is 50-something. What in the world is going on? How does she know this guy?" Determined to uncover Robert's connection to Latrice, detectives questioned him on January 30th, 2008, just hours after the murder. Initially evasive, Robert eventually revealed that he had been at church the previous evening and loaned his car to his roommate, Stephen Randolph, an accounting student at NCCU, whose own vehicle was out of service. This revelation introduced a new layer to the investigation: Stephen Randolph. With Stephen now in the mix, authorities collected Robert's DNA, fingerprints, and photographs. Detectives noticed cuts on his hands and legs, but Robert dismissed them as injuries from moving furniture. Despite suspicions, the lack of direct evidence led to his release. Now with 3 men under scrutiny, Darren, Robert, and Stephen, the case became even more perplexing. What connected them to Latrice? Who was Stephen Randolph, and what role did he play in this deadly puzzle? Detectives turned their attention to Stephen Randolph, a senior at NCCU and a popular figure on campus. Known as a charming ladies' man and a talented basketball player, Stephen had a hidden connection to Latrice, a relationship that went beyond academics. On February 1st, 2008, Robert Reeves escorted Stephen Randolph into the police station, saying he was willing to submit to questions to you. He complied with giving his DNA and getting his fingerprints. In the interrogation room, Stephen admitted to having an affair with Latrice, but downplayed its significance, insisting it wasn't serious. He claimed Latrice was separated from Darren, while in reality, they were newlyweds with no apparent marital issues. Latrice's close friends were shocked by the revelation, questioning why she had kept the relationship secret. A friend said, "She didn't tell us. Maybe she thought we'd judge her." Latrice's father shook his head. "If I knew what she was up to, we would have had a serious talk. Probably why she never spoke to me about the seeing another man, 'cause she probably knew exactly what I was going to do and what I was going to say." Stephen Randolph said it all started in September 2007 when he moved into Robert Reeves's house. Within a few days, he invited Latrice over for a study session. One thing led to another, and they ended up sleeping together. From that point forward, they occasionally engaged in intimate encounters. On the evening of January 29, 2008, Latrice came to his place, and they slept together again. After that, just before 10 p.m., she decided to go home. Here came another twist. Stephen had a girlfriend named Velma Newton, who was unaware of his affair. So after Latrice left, Stephen headed to his girlfriend's house and met with several friends. A few minutes later, he received a phone call from Latrice. She told Stephen that she might be pregnant and wanted to take their relationship further. Stephen agreed to discuss it the next time they met. Shortly after that, he received another call from Latrice. He answered, but no one spoke. Stephen stayed at Velma Newton's house until around 1:30 a.m., then drove home and went to sleep. When he woke up the next morning for an early class, he noticed a call from Latrice's phone around 2 a.m. Stephen also informed the police about a creepy detail. He and his girlfriend, Velma, had been receiving strange phone calls, and about a month before Latrice died, their tires were slashed. This led him to borrow Robert's car. However, he emphasized that he hadn't borrowed Robert's car for about 2 weeks since his car had been repaired, and that he had nothing to do with Latrice's death. Just like the other 2 men, Stephen provided fingerprints, DNA samples, was photographed, and released. After Stephen's interrogation, detectives were left with a series of new questions. Was Stephen telling the truth, or was he spinning a tale? Could he harm Latrice to protect his image, especially now that she was seeking a more serious relationship? Did Darren find out about his wife's deception and decide to take matters into his own hands? And what role did Robert play in this situation? Unfortunately, these were all speculations. To gather solid evidence, investigators had to wait for lab test results. As police pieced together a timeline for the murder, they stumbled upon another critical piece of information. Late at night on January 30th, 2008, Kimberly Parker, one of Latrice's closest friends, received a strange call from Latrice's phone. It was 2 a.m., not a time Latrice usually called. Curious and a bit uneasy, Kimberly answered. Instead of hearing her friend's voice, all she could make out were eerie sounds: wind, footsteps crunching on gravel, and cars speeding by in the distance.
I was in my bed and my phone was ringing. Latrice usually doesn't call late at night. That was kind of strange to me. So I picked up the phone. I heard a lot of movement. I heard cars driving by. It sounded like it was close to the highway. Something inside me just told me to just remain on the phone. I was saying, Latrice, 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 until I hung up the phone.
Eventually, she hung up and tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. Kimberly had no idea that this call would be the last connection to her friend. Later that day, when she got home from work, her mother delivered the devastating news. Kimberly couldn't believe it. She insisted in vain, "No, it can't be her. She called me last night." The autopsy report painted a horrifying picture of Latrice's final moments. Her throat had been slit, and she had suffered nearly 40 stab wounds to her face, neck, head, and torso. A brutal blow to the back of her head had left a severe injury. The wounds were so deep, they severed major arteries and even her vocal cords. One particularly wound stretched across her entire neck, as if someone had tried to decapitate her. Evidence of a struggle was clear, with signs of defensive wounds on her hands and broken fingernails. The medical examiner determined she had died between 1 and 2 a.m. This meant that by the time her phone had called Kimberly, Latrice was likely already gone. But why would the killer use Latrice's phone to call her loved ones? Was it a twisted game or an attempt to throw investigators off track? The search for answers didn't last long. Just days later, on February 2nd, 2008, Latrice's father, Sherman, received a call in the early morning hours.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, sheriff called me. Told me, "We have the man that killed your daughter in jail." We jumped up, we hugged, we laughed, we cried. We're so happy. And I only had one question. Who did it?
To everyone's shock, the suspect was Robert Reeves, a respected church leader known as the Bishop. Despite his protests of innocence, forensic evidence told a different story. His DNA was found on the steering wheel and inside Latrice's car. The police were confident they had their man, and no additional suspects were charged. For those who knew Robert, the news was hard to accept. One acquaintance said, "I never saw him as a violent person. He was always calm, never angry. How could he do something like this?" Sherman and his family struggled to make sense of it. Sherman said, "He had no business in this at all. It should have been between Stephen and Darren. Who is this man, and why did he do this? None of it makes sense." The media and the public were equally puzzled. How could a man with no apparent connection to Latrice commit such a brutal crime? Was he acting on behalf of someone else? What drove him to such violence? The case left behind more questions than answers, and for Latrice's loved ones, the pain of losing her in such a horrific way would never fade. The truth behind Robert Reeves' actions didn't fully come to light until his trial began on September 29, 2009, at the Wake County Courthouse. From the very start, the prosecutor made it clear, this case is going to be unique, complicated, and will get very strange very quickly. As the trial unfolded, shocking revelations emerged, with Stephen Randolph's testimony exposing a dark and hidden side of Robert Reeves. Stephen first met Robert in the spring of 2007 while working part-time at a car wash, struggling to make ends meet. One day, Robert struck up a conversation, asking Stephen about his job situation. When Stephen admitted he was looking for something stable, Robert introduced himself as a clinical research associate and offered to help him find work. Over the next few weeks, they met several times at South Point Mall, where Robert suggested Stephen move into his house for $300 a month. With no stable place to live, Stephen agreed and moved into the basement of Robert's home. Robert's sister also lived there, occupying an upstairs bedroom. At first, Stephen believed Robert was genuinely trying to help him, but things took a disturbing turn. In December 2007, Robert began expressing his disapproval of Stephen bringing women home. Then the situation escalated. Robert made unwanted advances, offering free rent in exchange for favors. He suggested Stephen join an escort service, claiming it would be a good financial opportunity. Stephen considered it briefly and refused. Despite feeling uncomfortable and disgusted by Robert's behavior, Stephen continued living there, struggling financially with nowhere else to go. To protect himself, he borrowed a 9mm Ruger from his cousin and kept it under his pillow. As 2007 drew to a close, strange and threatening events began to unfold. Stephen and his girlfriend, Velma, started receiving anonymous phone calls filled with chilling threats. The caller warned Stephen to stay away from certain activities, threatening to end his basketball career and even break his legs. In one particular message, the caller said he hoped Stephen had a gun. That same day, Stephen discovered his gun was missing, later finding out that Robert had confiscated it. On December 11, 2007, while driving to his girlfriend's house, Stephen found his car had a flat tire. After fixing it at a gas station and continuing his trip, he discovered all 4 tires had been slashed. The following day, Robert let Stephen borrow his car to get to school. Things took an even stranger turn over the Christmas break when Stephen traveled home to Baltimore. The mysterious man called Stephen's girlfriend, Velma, and apologized for slashing her tires. Velma rushed out to check and confirmed her tires had been vandalized. Piece by piece, the incidents pointed to one man, Robert Reeves. During the investigation, police uncovered that Robert Reeves owned 3 phones: a house phone, a regular cell phone, and another fun phone, which he used for personal matters. This so-called fun phone was linked to the threatening calls that Stephen and his girlfriend had received. Investigators traced the phone's location and found it matched the areas where their tires had been slashed. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of Robert's obsession with Stephen. Robert saw Latrice as an obstacle to the relationship he desperately wanted. On the night of January 29, 2008, Robert followed Latrice when she left his house. When she pulled over on the highway, he took the opportunity to attack and brutally kill her in a jealous rage. After the murder, Robert used Latrice's phone to call her loved ones, possibly to revenge and create confusion. Further damning evidence emerged when police found a partially melted trash can at Robert's home. Inside, they discovered burned fabric soaked with accelerant, which they believed was an attempt to destroy evidence linked to the crime. Prosecutors argued that these findings revealed Robert's double life, one as a respected church leader and the other as a dangerous predator driven by obsession and jealousy. However, Robert's defense team had a different story. They claimed that Robert had a disability that made it impossible for him to kill Latrice. His left arm was partially paralyzed due to an old injury from a mugging in New York. He couldn't hold anything heavy, had a weak grip, and limited movement in his left hand. Stabbing someone multiple times with just one hand would have been physically impossible. The defense also pointed the finger at Stephen Randolph, claiming he had the real motive. They suggested Stephen was worried that Latrice might be pregnant and feared it could ruin his future. The defense also argued that investigators had overlooked key evidence, including Stephen's collection of knives, one of which was a cane sword, but none had been tested for blood or DNA. They questioned whether police had properly handled the evidence and followed correct procedures throughout the investigation. Despite these efforts, the jury was convinced by the overwhelming physical evidence. After 2 days of deliberation, they reached a verdict. Robert Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder. On October 9, 2009, the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Today, Robert Reeves is serving his sentence at the Pasquotank Correctional Institution in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Following the conviction, Latrice's father, Sherman Jones, spoke to the media with a heavy heart. There's no more waiting, no more wondering. Maybe now we can try to move on with our lives. This man, he's a predator. He didn't just kill my daughter, he killed me, my wife, and even himself. Despite the relief of seeing justice served, the pain never truly faded for Latrice's family. Her father admitted, "I hear people talk about closure, but I don't even know what that means. It's been 12 years, and I still don't have it. I see her face every day, and it still hurts. I still cry. I still ask myself, why? Why did this have to happen?" Latrice's story is a haunting reminder of how quickly life can be taken away. She may have made mistakes, but nothing could justify the brutal way her life was cut short at just 21 years old. What do you think about this case? Did Robert kill Latrice alone? What drove him to such a horrific act? Was it truly jealousy? Or were there deeper secrets to this tragic love triangle? Feel free to share in the comments. If there's a case you're interested in, let us know. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.